The government in 2009 hired Goldman Sachs to help raise $6.5 billion for 1MDB by selling bonds to investors. The proceeds, however, were largely stolen. It was alleged that their senior bankers ignored warning signs of fraud in their dealings with 1MDB and power player Low Taek Joe, also known as Joe Low. The previous government administration, led by former Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, had in 2020 agreed to free the investment bank of any wrongdoing in the corruption scandal. Goldman Sachs was only required to pay Malaysia $2.5 billion in cash. They also had included the $606 million in the commission it had taken and supposed to return to Malaysia to this sum. Prior to the Muhyiddin's administration settlement, former Prime Minister Tun Mahathir Mohamad had asked for a $9.3 billion settlement. This was reduced to $7.3 billion upon advice from former Attorney General Tommy Thomas. Many have demanded that an investigation be opened, with former Second Finance Minister Datuk Seri Johari Abdul Ghani accusing Goldman Sachs of cheating, causing Malaysia to lose billions. This was the original deal. Goldman Sachs was hired to raise $3.5 billion in two bonds in 2012. The investment bank was also asked to raise another bond in 2013, which amounted to $3 billion. All three bonds have a 10-year tenure. In 2022, Malaysia paid the first two bonds, which amounted to $3.5 billion. The government is currently having trouble financing the third bond, which is worth $3 billion. The bond is supposed to be paid this month. It also looks like Malaysia will not be getting the $1.4 billion from the asset recovery. Here's the thing. On February 27, Malaysia announced that Abu Dhabi state-owned International Petroleum Investment Company and Albar Investment PJS had agreed to pay 1MDB and Minister of Finance Incorporated $1.8 billion to settle their legal dispute. Now, for Goldman Sachs, this payment could be their free ride to ultimately conclude their settlement, when in fact this was clearly a government-to-government arrangement that Malaysia initiated. Johari voiced his discontent over how Goldman Sachs had included the fines levied by the Malaysian government against AmBank, KPMG and Deloitte as part of the $1.4 billion recovery. He insisted that the fines worth around $800 million were never supposed to be part of the asset recovery. Neither is the $1.8 billion that Malaysia will receive from the G2G deal. Any repayment from the asset recovery, he said, must come from Goldman Sachs' own initiative in recovering them and not to latch on and claim what Malaysia had worked on as theirs.
Asset recovery 1MDB ni banyak. Tetapi kita tak nak Goldman Sachs ambil fine yang kita buat. Kita fine 1MDB, kita fine AmBank 2.8 bilion, kita fine Goldman Deloitte, KPMG. Dia tak boleh tolak daripada perjanjian yang dia dah sign. 1.4 bilion US itu dia kena bayar. Sebab tu saya nak minta kerajaan melihat ini semula. Kita rasa tak adil. Kita satisfied dapat 2.5 bilion kerana kita tercapai kita punya objektif untuk politik kita. Jadi saya nak kita tengok dari segi soal negara. Siapa bersalah, ambil tindakan. Tak peduli.
Johari said Malaysia may have to resort to arbitration for Goldman Sachs to return $1.4 billion from the asset recovery to Malaysia.